We are on the line today with Jagger Waters. Jagger, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to be able to chat, and we're going to begin like we normally do. What's something inspirational going on, either in your life or maybe in the world right now?
Something that I've seen online as a trend that we're returning to these like live events, IRL experiences. I don't know. That's what my Instagram algorithm is feeding me that, partially because I used to work in live events and still would like to again and bring this full circle to spaces that are theatrical, communal. You have to be there in person. We're all a little bit teched out, and I know that we're about to start a conversation about AI of all things, but we are kind of oversaturated with technology, with AI, with things that we don't know if what we're seeing is real. So we are craving these experiences, even with like these higher ticket prices, like 30, 60, $100 experiences where you're in a space that's very curated with people who you might be able to connect with, whether you're doing some kind of art craft or in a walk-through immersive experience. I'm just seeing an explosion of those events, and that really inspires me that as humans, we are balancing our relationship with technology with very tangible physical experiences as well.
We don't have to go down the ticket prices rabbit hole, but oh my god, it is really frustrating. I'm dating myself, but I remember like $15 for a show in Williamsburg in New York City, and that was like whatever, 12 years ago or something. In Denver, it's very bad. Actually, Meow Wolf as an immersive artistic experience is the cheapest in town for an upcoming show, which was shocking to me.
Yeah, they can get up there, but we really want to get offline, and that investment can be worth it.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting tension to maybe start with or get into a little bit later, where you're working in this AI cinema space, and yet we're also talking about getting offline. And I sense that there might be a tension between the online or technological AI, but then also the in person. So, can we just start with I've given you a little bit of an introduction, but could you introduce yourself and the work that you're doing because it's so rad?
Definitely, definitely. Well, the background I have is writing. If you take it all the way back, my experience is writing and producing for theater, so playwriting, and then I worked in the film and TV industry here in LA, writing for film and television, and then during the writer's strike of 2023 is when I kind of pulled the curtain back on AI, and it was something that everyone set out to kind of protest, but at the same time, I did want to educate myself on what was happening, and that's what I want to inspire other people to do as well. As much as there is enough to criticize about AI, it's not going away. It is something that you should be educated on, whether any kind of creative that you are. So yeah, and that's I'm right now I work with Escape, which is a streaming platform for neo cinema storytellers. So not just AI, but any kind of video content. We have films that are live action, hybrid, claymation, animation, AI, stories that yeah, you can upload as a creator, you can drop them into X and Instagram and YouTube, but that's all it's such a big well to drop your original stories into. So we wanted to create a platform that's a bit more curated, a bit more specific, and geared toward the creators themselves.
Can you talk a bit about how that came to be? Can you remind me of the term neo?
Neo cinema.
I just think about
Yeah.
neoclassical. This is a new world
Yeah.
for me. I imagine for some of the listeners as well.
Oh,
Could you break down maybe
sure.
not all the different genres, but when you're talking about that, a little bit more about what you mean?
I think it's like currently just a cinema that uses technology or digital virtual means of telling a story that might go a step beyond just taking out your iPhone and filming something like that. So combining different AI tools, combining different workflows, but a lot of creators kind of create and hustle together different tools that are not intended to be used together, but that's how you can create something kind of extraordinary. So yeah, neo cinema, I don't know, it's a loose term. We're still using it and defining it, but cinema of the future, or a viewing experience that's more catered towards the future than the past. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Have you seen, while you've been curating or maybe creating yourself, have you seen a particularly cool infusion of different tools all together?
Yeah, I mean, they change so quickly, and just like last year to right now, like last summer to this summer, it's wildly different. I mean, the voice changing technology for dialogue is fantastic. You know, there was a brief window of time where you can hear an AI generated voice because there were only the standard like 5 or 6 in the library that we were hearing all over Instagram and all that. But now you can record your own dialogue, you can record your own facial performance with your iPhone, and then impose that performance, whether it's vocal, visual, or both, onto an AI image. And so the lip sync technology is getting really advanced, and I think that's really exciting. And if you're someone who wants to tell animated stories, you can do all the voiceover yourself. You can give it the performance that you want to hear, but then change it and make it sound like an old man, or a younger person, or a woman, or whoever. And yeah, seeing technologists become voice actors has been really, really fun.
That's always been my dream, is to be a really good voice actor, and so maybe I can break in now. One thing that's really interesting to me about the story you just told is moving from the writer's strike into this space. And in talking to some of my colleagues who are in Hollywood, the writer's strike plus AI, there's a lot of emotion wrapped up in that, of stories around job replacement, maybe some actuality around job replacement and script writing and things like that. Can you talk about that transition in your career and how you make sense of some of those knots?
Yeah, I mean, it's a knot that I bumped up against for sure, but I also had to take a step back and see that I've never seen someone come out on top by resisting an emergent technology, if we're being honest. And then if you do, a lot of that fear and a lot of that confrontation comes from, I think, a lack of education about what AI really can do and what it excels at. So if you pull back the curtain the way I did, you'll see that writers and directors are actually the most well-positioned creatives in the industry to use AI. That if you come from a storytelling background, as a writer, as a director, what you want to see on screen, you know what the emotional arc of your characters is. If you can tell a well-crafted story, you are very well positioned to adopt AI. Someone who, or use it in your workflow, whether it's generating images that you're going to use for a pitch deck, a trailer, a small proof of concept piece, just to give an audience or an executive a visual understanding of the story that you're trying to tell. I think that AI can be used as a communication tool between creatives and executives moving forward. So that's why I encourage writers and directors specifically to, hey, give it a chance, start working with it. You'll see that it's not really an idea generation machine. If you can't tell a good story without AI, you can't tell a good one with AI. So that's what I would say.
Do you have a favorite story or maybe genre of story that you like to tell in your work?
Oh, I mean, I love comedy. And that's definitely one of the hardest. That's one of the hardest ones. Like comedy and drama. Look, human beings are the best when it comes to performances that are comedic or dramatic in nature. AI excels at helping bolster stories that are a bit more in the fantasy realm, something that's VFX driven, sci-fi genre. It can really lower the budget on stories that can be told around those genres. But just pure comedy, drama, dialogue-based work, that's where I started. So, early on, now what feels like 10 years ago, but was only 2 years ago, I worked on a team that was in this AI competition, and our short film won because it was a comedy. It made people laugh. It made fun of itself. It was self-aware. It had heart. It had, the timing and the editing was comedic. And even though our film was not on a technical level the best one, it definitely it told a story that resonated with the people who were judging that competition. So comedy, I gravitate towards that. I still struggle with that in using the tools myself, but I also love animation, adult animation, and the tools are getting better at lip syncing non-human faces. So animal characters, aliens, something that would be more cartoonish. The ability to kind of lip sync dialogue that you would say with a non-human face is just getting better and better. So hopefully that can open up more of a comedy door. But comedy is definitely that's the most challenging one. It's really hard.
Yeah, well, you're talking. I'm thinking. I've been watching a lot of Josh Johnson, who does a lot of political commentary, a lot of stand up, and I've been thinking about like what an AI stand up would look like. Maybe you have in your mind like a robot on stage telling bad jokes, but like what would AI stand up look like when you're thinking about comedy?
Oh
Like, why is that
no.
so difficult? Do you think?
Well, I'm pretty anti AI stand up. If I can defend, I don't know, if I could defend that, I'm like, no, let's leave stand up to the human beings. It's hard enough as it is. But yeah, high quality comedy and drama are better performed by humans and always will be. I think, I don't know, my background in theater, I'll always advocate for that. But really, the use for AI, the use case for AI that I encourage writers and directors to explore is like if you have something that's very would be high budget, car explosions, in creatures that would take a lot of VFX, makeup, CGI, or whatnot, you can now communicate what you wrote visually on the page, what you see, with someone else using AI. So, yeah, no AI stand-ups for me.
Real quick, people mean different things when they say AI in a lot of
Yeah,
different spaces. It's also, like you said,
industries.
moving very quickly. When you're talking about AI or when we're talking about AI in cinema, what do we mean?
Yeah, I'm talking LLMs, so large language models like ChatGPT or Claude, image generation, Midjourney, Creo, Flux, any AI image generator, and then AI video generators. So somewhere that you would upload one of those images or use a text to video prompt to create an entirely AI generated clip of a video, and then the lip sync tools, like the ones I mentioned. So.
How I in talking to people, I get really overwhelmed with the number of tools that
Yeah.
are out there. I know some of your work is in like trying to keep up with that and then educating
Yeah.
people around that. For folks who are feeling really overwhelmed and who are like, I want to get into this AI art, AI cinema space, but I just emotionally, it's really difficult for me to stay on top of things. Have you struggled with that? And then how do you recommend getting through that?
Oh yeah. Even on a daily basis, there's kind of a deluge of information that's pretty overwhelming. So there are creators that you can follow on X. People who are making AI films that share their workflows in the comments, and Curious Refuge, who I took the Curious Refuge course in AI filmmaking early in 2024. That's coursework that will walk you through really every step of understanding, not just building a really solid story or bringing your original story to life, but how are you going to use the tools, helping you not feel so overwhelmed in a more like self-paced, step-by-step kind of like educational course that I think would be really, really helpful to young students or people of any age, any industry. If you don't know where to start, the Curious Refuge community is such a good place to start.
The AI burnout is real in a lot of different areas of
Yeah.
our lives and just being inundated. I want to go back to storytelling because for me, storytelling and hearing people's very human stories, whether it's expressed through AI or just around a campfire, is a way that I help myself with my overwhelm and with my technology inundation. For you, when you're thinking about storytelling more generally, what is storytelling to you? I don't know if that's an unfair question, but when you're thinking
Well,
about storytelling, what does that mean?
I mean, it really changed when you throw in vertical social media like TikTok and Instagram. Like, there's just a new genre of video that we all see all day, every day. And it's like the Instagram video essay. You know what I'm talking about? Like, there's this, yeah, like a 30 to 90 second, like, it has three act story structure. Like, you listen to the reels that perform well on TikTok, Instagram, or anywhere, you're starting with a hook that pulls somebody in. You have a beginning, a middle, and then some kind of conclusion or a cliffhanger that then gets you invested in watching the next video that person made. So that's like this, and with AI too, a lot of the creators who didn't necessarily have a background in film, traditional film or TV, there's kind of like an AI poetry video genre that's also coming out where it's like it's very visual. It's more like art film than narrative. So AI really can excel at non-narrative visual storytelling. And if you're someone, again, who has a stronger storytelling background, you can guide it, and bring narrative, good, well-written dialogue and narrative quality to it. But yeah, that's the new storytelling in 2025 is, oh, I mean, everything's a story. Brand is a story. You know, like your brand, like personal brand has never been more important. And that's, I think, even more intimidating than catching up with a lot of these tools, to be honest, is like, how do I update 5 different platforms that consistently communicate the same message of who I am as a person, that both honors my soul and reflects outwardly how I want to be perceived by other people? That in and of itself, that's not even an AI film conversation. That's just like, how do we exist online? But it comes back to storytelling. And I think that the use of AI in something like, for B-roll, and if you're someone who, you're a writer, you're a poet, you can use visuals and edit them together very quickly, that would maybe feel more branded towards what you want to say. So I don't know. I could talk forever on that question, but this is, yeah, and that's just the vertical side of it. You know, we still have traditional film and TV out there. It still exists, but we're also facing the death of monoculture. You know, like there is no singularly uniting TV show or genre of film anymore, right? Like we're at the end, like we're in the dusk phase of the superhero genre, and the big, now and then, you know, we have a Barbenheimer, you know, summer or whatever, where everyone kind of goes and sees the same thing, but it's not every week. And like our parents or grandparents would have experienced with watching the same TV shows, you know, like my dad will talk about watching the Jeffersons or All in the Family, and it's like everyone watched those, and that's what you talked about, and it kept you connected. So film and TV as this connective tissue culturally, it's not that it collapsed, it's just that it dispersed into a bunch of different niche topics that now we're all alone scrolling on our phones. And that breeds a different kind of storytelling. But it always comes back to 3-act story structure. You got to have a hook, you got to have a beginning, middle, and some kind of conclusion, and that will be true to the end of time.
It goes back to something we were talking about at the very beginning, which is that connection part. Like I remember, again, dating myself, but when a new episode of The Simpsons would come out, and then we would go into school, right, the next week, and like we would all talk about that episode, and or like Friends or whatever, a new sitcom. And there is that disconnect where people seem to talk past each other or have different frames of references, not just generationally, but just in between one another, of not having that common reference point. And in some ways that's great, I imagine, because we all have our different little pockets, but in other ways that disconnection is real.
I think the last time we had it was Game of Thrones, right? It was like the last really big one. I don't know.
I remember, well, again, to date myself, I was in college when parts of it were airing, and I just remember like us all getting together in the top room, like all crowded, like 50 of us together, just to watch it as it came out, because it was a cultural moment. For that connection part, because we started with talking about people being in the same room, getting more offline, could we come back to that of you're bringing people together online with, say, Escape AI, and also we want people to gather in person more. How do we work both at the same time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, well, there are experiences and like future collaborations that involve like, okay, this is a curated set of films that will only exist here, in this location at this certain time, or having more immersive cinema. I'm involved with a project right now that intends to be immersive and pop-up, where you have to, it's not a built for streaming experience. AI will be used in the production pipeline, but the goal is a local regional theater release where you have to go and see it in person. And there's a reason for that, because there's a very immersive element that will be a surprise for the audience. So there is, and that matters to me, and I think to a lot of us in the community, where it's like, yeah, okay, we're using AI, but how can we use that to come back around and actually create an experience that you do have to be seated there in person next to somebody else? So, yeah.
I'm thinking, you didn't talk about this at all, but I'm thinking about pop-up haunted houses and how that's a really fun experience because of that, almost the embodiedness.
I did Halloween. Oh, yeah? I worked in Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Yeah.
Did you have a character of choice, or were you more
Yeah.
behind the scenes?
Well, they cast you like you don't have a choice; you just get cast. But I got cast as a face character, which was cool. I was the Lady Gaga character from American Horror Story season 5, so I got to walk around with like this like silver glove and this glamorous makeup while everyone else was in these sweaty prosthetic masks.
That sounds really fun. Honestly, was it good? Was it
It
fun?
was like the craziest adult summer camp that you can imagine. I only did it 1 year. My body would not allow me to do it today. If you're going to do it, be between the ages of 19 and 23.
I went to the Ren Fair with my partner last weekend, and that was an experience, and it reminded me of just an adult summer camp where everyone's drinking a lot of beer. It was delightful.
I imagine it's pretty similar. Yeah.
For the, I think going back to the storytelling of AI for you, and thinking about the kind of stories that not just you want to tell, but you want other people to tell and to get out into the world. Are there stories that you think AI is particularly good at leveraging or telling, or stories that you haven't seen in the past that you think AI can facilitate in a better way?
Yeah, I mean, something that's highly stylized, period pieces, fantasy, things that are surreal, anything that would require traditionally expensive VFX. AI is going to really excel at. So, and it's also great at short form videos. So creating a single consistent character, dropping them into different scenarios, again, and mostly for short form. For a singular creator, I think that that's kind of the way to go. So big, sky's the limit kind of imagination-driven storytelling where it's like you need a dragon made of, empty Coke cans that's swimming through a river made of gold. Like you can make that now. That's something that, even as a writer, like I got so used to writing low budget because that was gonna like increase my odds of selling something. And now, like a younger writer, or myself still, I have plenty of time. You can just expand beyond that and be like, hey, there's not really a budgetary constraint to absurd ideas like that, which will hopefully lend itself to a very creative kind of auteur-driven direction for the future of film.
Yeah, you mentioned being a scriptwriter as well. When you put on your hat as a scriptwriter versus as a director, or what one of our colleagues says is, a conductor of AI cinema, what do you think of that differently, or do you think of the use of AI for script writing? Do you think that's better, worse, different? How do you conceptualize it?
No, I think that being familiar with the tools and being kind of like boots on the ground with a lot of the AI creators and content right now, like it positions me to write something that would be optimized for AI. So there's a benefit to that. So you can, again, like my more expansive, ridiculous, absurd, high budget ideas can come to life. But at the same time, I also know that certain stories will be slightly easier. If you're doing like writing, well, if someone's just getting started with the tools, specifically creating a narrative that is voiceover driven would be simpler because you don't have to worry about like lip sync quality necessarily on that first round. You can focus on the storytelling, the visuals, the editing, the timing, and worry about the lip syncing for like active back and forth dialogue later. But like writing a story that's like kind of like diary entry style or whatnot. So there's workarounds if you want to use AI but it feels overwhelming. You can write a story that's told in a specific way that's going to prevent you from hitting certain roadblocks that might require a slightly more technical touch.
I'm happy to talk to you, especially because of where you're located in LA, and you're kind of in the hub of a lot of this AI storytelling, it seems like right now. And we mentioned earlier some of the criticisms of it and how those have evolved over time. And I'm wondering, for you, as someone who is in that center point and seeing a lot of these conversations evolving in real time about benefits, job replacement, all of that stuff, even like what is art in the first place, is this replacing art and our human experience of art? Where are you seeing those conversations right now? Are they still as fervent as they were, say, a year or two ago? Have they changed? What's your experience been?
There's definitely still a tension in certain communities. Really, that the studio adoption is happening pretty swiftly. Major studios, production houses are using AI, and they may not be direct or public about it, but behind the scenes they most likely are to some degree. Whether that's privately training models that would be for their own IP that they already own, or just something that could kind of speed up the ideation process for generating more episodes of something, or creating concept art, marketing materials, posters. So there's AI use across the board. But then, yeah, in these private spheres of writers and directors, there can be a tension. But there's two success stories that I really want to point to, which would be I got to see the first AI film that successfully negotiated a contract with SAG-AFTRA. Creator, his name's Kevin the Kid. He made a film called Echo Hunter. Amazing creator and storyteller. And that film, I met the actors who were in the film, and the SAG contracts that they had were very unique, but they met the union where they wanted to be met. So that's a success story where you had someone who was using AI in production, but they used human actors live, having a set with people on set, recording emotional performances, and then using AI as really a layer in VFX. So I think that's a success story because the union met the AI filmmaker met the union, and got to produce the movie, paid some up and coming actors, and got to create what they wanted to with a much lower budget. So I think that's a success story. And then there's the first feature film that based around characters created with AI, got copyright on their characters, their story. And that's Chad Nelson and Nick Cleverov. The story's called Critters, and they're now working with the writers of Toy Story 3 on a script based on this idea from a very early AI short film that was made in 2023. So those are both success stories that, one of them shows that it's possible to have your work optioned and then eventually copywritten and produced into a film, and that we can meet the unions where they want.
I love Nick. Nick's a great guy.
Yeah,
I met him once. He's wonderful. When you're thinking about big studios versus, say, an individual on Instagram versus a small studio that's just getting started, do you think about AI use differently? Maybe in terms of ethics, maybe in terms of just whether it's useful or good or efficient. But in general, what's your vibe, and is it different between those different levels?
Yeah, there's a difference between all three. I think that an individual solo creator who wants to tell their own stories, like, you're gonna be using AI throughout the pipeline, like from your idea generation, image generation, just down the line. And I think that AI studios will also do that, but the AI studio model will be a combination of hybrid films. So films that you do involve real people. You are working with someone on a set. That the film Echo Hunter by Kevin the Kid did exactly this, where there was a virtual production set. So you do have a call sheet. You have to be on set. There's craft services. It's everything you know and love about production, but post looks a little bit different. So yeah, I think that it comes down to VFX in both regards, but the studio direction may be more centered towards, we're going to have there's a fairly big budget still, we're going to be on set, we're working with the director, whereas the individual creator at home with their computer may be creating fully AI generated films. I say generated, not like AI created, because human, you can write it, you can direct it. You're making calls with taste. Every image that you choose, every the way that you choose to color your film at the end, you're making calls on the taste at every step of the way. So even something that's fully AI generated by a singular creator, you have to be a tastemaker through and through, and a good storyteller. So that's really how I'd say the two are different.
To what degree do you think that it should be disclosed when certain types of AI? Is there a line? So say when a big studio does it, some have come under a lot of fire when it hasn't been disclosed, and then someone decides or describes it as like, no, you used AI and therefore the art is damaged, or the art How
there
do you
was an
draw that line?
interesting, a couple weeks ago, Netflix announced that they had used AI, but it was like months after the fact. They were like, we didn't tell you, but back in April there was a series that did use AI for a very specific, again, a VFX shot that would have been very expensive, costly, time consuming. And I, as much as I think that we have to have transparency, I'd love, yeah, always say it. Like, say if you're using AI or not. One, it'll get rid of the stigma. Two, it will normalize the use a little bit. And it's, people do deserve, they have a right to know. But I think that that decision was pretty smart because it was a way to show, in these early stages, it was a way to say, hey, you didn't notice, it didn't hurt anyone, and the result was great. I think Ted Sarandos said, the creators were happy, the artists were happy, and the audience was happy with the result. So it got to be like, hey, we're telling you after the fact, but look, this was very successful. And moving forward, I think that transparency is healthier, but I understand that choice, and I think that it will hopefully massage the public into understanding how these tools are used in the pipeline.
I have one foot in the academic AI ethics space. And so I am curious for you as a practitioner of this technology for the data use, because obviously generative AI, it's taking in all this data from all these people. A lot of people probably didn't consent to that data being used, that were trained, the model was trained on, all of that stuff. And this is not a leading question. I'm genuinely curious when you're thinking about data use, maybe in terms of copyright or just consent of data use, how
Yeah,
you're thinking about that as a creator.
it's a really smart question, and I think that the the way time will tell with a lot of the tools and a lot of the potential legal battles down the road. But there's an ethical kind of like code that most of the AI filmmakers that I know, myself included, stick to, which is when you are prompting, when you are entering any text prompt into an image generator or a video generator, that you're specifically not referencing a director, a piece of art, a film, a style, that like you are keeping that highly descriptive and adjective driven, not borrowing the direct name of a certain director. So, and that's actually how the when I heard Nick talk about getting the copyright for Critters, something that he mentioned on this public panel was that the prompts that were reviewed by the Copyright Office, like when you show up to the Copyright Office and you have pages and pages of prompts that say, hey, that are paragraphs long, and it's like, this is unquestionably human written and guided. We manipulated the technology so specifically and directly using our human written words that we wrote ourselves, that it is unquestionable that we created this character from scratch. There was no reference or mention of another studio, an existing director, or an existing character. This was built from descriptive adjectives, which is really, prompt writing as its new art form.
Do you think of prompt writing itself as an art form?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, and you can do that. You can do that by hand. It actually can get tedious if you're not using a little bit of AI assisted help. And a few weeks ago there was a discussion online with a bunch of different AI filmmakers about something called JSON prompting, which would really just be using a large language model like ChatGPT or Claude, saying like, hey, like I want to create a prompt that and describe it and say what you want to see, but then request it in like JSON format, which is like just a language that's a bit more native to AI. So you're using AI as the translator to communicate to AI, but that in and of itself is still requires heavily detailed human authored input in order to even create that more code-driven way of prompting that then the AI will interpret a little bit better. But if your seed prompt kind of sucked, then it's not going to work.
Is there a line where you think that AI shouldn't be used at all? Or have you seen, like, without naming names, like a crossing of that line where you're like, hold up, we shouldn't be doing it for that, beyond comedy?
Well, that's the most benign thing that you can do with this technology is tell fictional stories. Because the manipulation, the misinformation, the use of a real person or public figure's face, that could cause damage. So that's when I like my advocacy for AI filmmaking is like, look, telling a story that is so obviously fictional or fantastical or not real is the most ethical use of this technology and the best use of it, really. So telling funny little original stories with it is the best thing you can do, because we don't want to be the people who are using it for to spread misinformation or to make it look like someone said something they didn't. So if we can keep it in the realm of fiction, that's healthier.
How do we do that? Is this a regulatory thing? Is this like a cultural, just we have to set norms for how this is used? Do you have a silver bullet for how to fix all of the challenges of AI in the world?
I don't, but there's just more in the AI filmmaking and cinema world. Like, there's a lot of respect between us for people who are creating really original stories. Not the like, oh, a fan fiction or it's based on this, or you can see that there's stormtroopers in it. Like, if you're using IP, even as parody, it's like, that was great. Like, we had a lot of that early on, but now it's like, okay, what are the really great original human stories that we can tell instead? So there's a room for parody, but I don't know.
When you're thinking like 50, 100 years into the future, where do you want this tech to go? We're still early days in a lot of ways. Some people are just like, this is like the internet. It'll continue to grow in some ways, but also is profoundly limited. But for you, if you could wave a magic wand in 50 years, where would this tech go?
Oh, 50 is so far. I mean, like 5, I could maybe speak to 5. Like, where would I want it to go in 5 years?
You can stick with 5. That's fine.
Yeah, if I could stick with 5, I think that, again, a creator who couldn't afford film school, can't afford to move to LA or New York to be here, and these financial barriers of entry that have existed in the entertainment space for a very long time. I really want to see this technology help break that down. So as cool as it is to kind of empower the local community here in Hollywood, in LA, and kind of help people make the transition from traditional film into this new form of storytelling, or new technology, same storytelling, but new technology. I also really want to see the next like incredible director out of, a city or a country of that someone who would have a disadvantage, who could never financially be like, I want to go learn under the wing of a really famous director, and they just can't do that financially, that these tools empower them to create their own stories, to release them, to spread them with the world, and change our perspective on storytelling. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the youth, what young people, and this next generation of storytellers that grow up with this content, and technology, what are they going to make? And that's disruptive, and I like it. I like that it's it doesn't. There's the common phrase of like, oh, it democratizes or it levels the playing field. Those words are a little overused, but I really believe that, and that really inspires me to know that a kid somewhere out there on his laptop can tell a really cinematic, beautiful story that would have been so high budget and impossible to tell before.
For folks who are listening, of any age, but maybe folks who are younger, who are like, I want to do what Jagger's doing, what is like the first step? Because also I know there's a lot of courses out there, but those can be expensive too. So where would someone begin?
Social media, like following, finding AI filmmakers that are on X or Instagram or TikTok, and just being an observer and really and watching the conversations that they have with other people, watching the way that they interact and comment or different tool updates. There are free newsletters. There are all sorts of newsletters for AI filmmaking that you can sign up for. Curious Refuge being one of them. You can sign up for the newsletter, and they curate a ton of different AI tools and news. So yeah, just dive in. It'll be overwhelming at first, but a lot of the information that can help get you started, or just get your engine revving about this, is free, and it's out there, and it's also a very warm and welcoming community to anyone who wants to start giving it a shot. And also, it's worth posting. Even if you make something and it's 5 seconds long, it's 10 seconds long, post that. It's worth it. Just get in the habit of sharing, I made something, even if it's really, really short, even if it's really, really simple. That's a big adjustment for me as a writer, coming from 10 years of like, no, you have to drop something that's polished and perfect and long form. And it's like, we're in the opposite realm now. Like, it can be imperfect, it can be short. It's just a daily practice. So
Has that felt like whiplash at all
yes.
to you? Because that seems, I mean, I'm very similar. I'm doing like this academic paper writing on the other side, and then I'm doing these like short spoken word poetry, kind of playing around with AI over here. It's totally different sides of my brain.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a spoken word poetry background too, back in the day. And like, that's part of me is like, oh my God, with my human brain, I have to remember that I have a human brain, you know, and even using AI tools, like there's an adolescent growing pain that I'm still in with it, because part of me is so ingrained where it's like, not the perfectionist mindset, because that's one thing, but wow, I don't have the computing power of AI. I have a human brain, and the human brain, like, it can take 3 weeks to perfect a poem or a very short script. Like, when you're living in the intuitive, creative space, it doesn't want a time limit. It doesn't want a deadline. You know, any creative person will tell you that. So there's a little bit of conflict with that, where it's like, okay, but if you're going to stay in this AI filmmaking game, you got to post something every single day, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be polished. Like, that's hard. And I'm still figuring that one out myself, and I should do it more. But
No, but I mean, it's AI doesn't fix the rat race either.
No.
And in some ways, new like social media things continue to, you have to create more. Maybe that invites us into more like mistakes, happy mistakes for us to show off our humanness, but it's tough.
And like getting over a cringe of like, oh, if I post something that's not great, it's like, guess what? Everyone will forget tomorrow. Like, it moves really fast. Just keep going. And yeah, get out of the perfectionist mindset and just start creating. Which is advice I should take.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I'm like, I needed to hear that. Yeah, let's do that. I guess that's why we're doing the podcast as well. As we move towards closing, is there a particular piece of art, media, book, music, poem that you would recommend to listeners, and why?
Yes, book. Traditional paperback book that you could read, or an audio book, that's fine too. Ways of Being by James Bridle. This is a book on consciousness that actually starts with the author's relationship with AI, and it starts with an AI kind of inspired story, but then he walks you through how we view and understand consciousness, the way that the human perspective, we imposed our own understanding of what thinking is onto how animals think. And then the more we learn about animals, the more we learn about plants, the more that we learn about inanimate materials, including like just objects or surfaces, there is a intelligence to these materials, but they don't work the way that we work mentally. So he reframed, like, reading that book helped me understand AI in more of an expansive way, because I'm like, oh, I'm imposing my human understanding of how thinking works onto this thing that does not think like me at all. So Ways of Being is a beautifully written book. It's very poetic, but it's also highly educational. So I really recommend it.
Amazing. Jagger, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.